foundation. The foundation exists to develop and support directors and choreographers. We do that through professional development opportunities, roundtable discussions, panel discussions, public conversations like this one. And it's all about creating access to the field, creating community, and recognizing the work that directors and choreographers do. I'm very happy to be here tonight. This has been a long time in the planning. We have Justin Emeka and Ruben Santiago-Hudson and John Diaz here. About what it means to be a multi-hyphenate artist.
Thank you.
Who's the artistic director of Two River Theater and a dramaturg and producer.
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. So I just wanted to say a thank you and a shout out to Megan and Alana and the folks here who put this evening together and invited all you good people here to join us on this conversation. This is not an event I've witnessed before that the SDC Foundation has done, but I assume you understand it to be an opportunity to hear from these guys about their work in the theater, and particularly as directors, and a one-on-one conversation. And knowing this gentleman as I do very well and getting to know Justin, I do sort of wonder what my role is here. These guys could talk about the theater in profound and amazing ways for days and days and days. But I'm going to try to moderate a little bit. We're going to get them talking some, and then towards the end, stop and take some questions from you folks and open up the conversation a little bit. I thought I should start, even though in your program you do have some pretty lengthy bios of these gentlemen. I thought I would just, I took some notes of things that kind of rise to the top for me about both of them. If you don't mind, I'll just read my little bio as by way of introduction of, first, Justin works as an actor, a writer, director, and capoeirista, but when capoeirista. Yes, I wanted to stumble over that just to make sure we underlined that aspect of who he is. He uses artistic and cultural innovation to direct high-quality, thoughtful, entertaining theater, specializing in new approaches to classical texts, as well as imaginative stagings of popular and emerging playwrights. He has worked at Seattle Children's Theater, Yale Rep, Classical Theater of Harlem, the Intiman, ACT, among many others. And he is currently a professor at Oberlin College, where he teaches theater and Africana studies. So, and then to my left here, Ruben Santiago-Hudson works as an actor, a writer, a director, and a producer. He has performed in numerous theaters across the country and many times on Broadway, including his Tony-winning turn as Canewell in August Wilson's Seven Guitars. He's acted on the big screen and the small, and currently has a recurring role on TNT's Public Morals. He writes for film and television also, most notably his award-winning HBO movie of his play, Lackawanna Blues. As a director, and here I hope will be the only moment where I editorialize tonight. As a director, I would say he is the greatest interpreter of August Wilson's plays that we have working in the theater today. He also directs the work of contemporary playwrights, including Dominique Morisseau, whose play Skeleton Crew begins soon at the Atlantic here in town. His latest play that he wrote and directed, Your Blues Ain't Sweet Like Mine, premiered at my theater, Two River Theater out in Red Bank, New Jersey, this past spring. So, we were just talking back in the green room, too, about how this came together, and this notion that here are these two gentlemen working in many, as Megan said, multi-hyphenate ways across the spectrum of the performing arts. They do a multitude of things in their work in the theater and elsewhere. But I would also say, knowing Ruben well and getting to know Justin, that they also, as well as doing a multitude, they contain multitudes. And I know in both of them, in their hearts and minds, there's lots of stuff that they're thinking about and feeling about in terms of the theater for sure, but in their lives as Americans and as artists that inform their work in so many ways. But I wanted to start just by kind of focusing towards what I imagine this conversation, where this conversation should start, with their lives and work as directors, even though they do so many other things. And I thought to just ask both of you to tell us a little bit about your trajectories towards directors. Both of you started in in your careers and in your work as artists, doing things other than directing. And I think in both of your cases, you came to sort of this focus on directing a little bit later in your trajectory. So if you could tell us both how that happened, but then inside that, why, and what about what you were doing seemed to lead you towards thinking that directing was the thing to do. So maybe you can start, Justin.
I started in life, I fell in love with the stage at an early age. I loved performing. I was just one of those kids who would always perform in class. You know, I would read out loud, I'd perform on cue. I would be in church plays, talent shows. I was just that kid, you know. So I started acting from a very young age. As I started getting in high school, I started to become aware of like what I could and could not get called to audition for. And I had an agent, and I would, you know, go to different auditions and stuff and started to see call sheets and started to feel the limitations of what I could and could not audition for, which then left me with a deep kind of feeling of alienation from my own craft and my own passion, which just kind of naturally led me to start thinking about the stories that were being told on stage and in film. And I came into directing just kind of naturally. I went to college, and I thought I was going to study theater, but I decided to study African American studies and just kind of expand my perspective on history, on the world, and where I stood in the world, and what kind of stories I was interested in telling. And then after I graduated from college, I started working in inner cities, working with young people, and started using theater as a way to kind of just tell stories, you know. And that's really how I started to get into directing, just trying to help tell other people tell their stories. And then, I realized I started to become that guy who could work with inner city kids. So I wanted to keep directing, but I wanted to kind of work with more resources and get to do more things. So then I decided to go to graduate school for directing. And so that's just kind of the way that I got in.
Okay. How about you, Ruben?
Well, similar. You always start as a child with an interest in enjoying something. It was, basically kept me out of trouble. Coming up in my era, there was a lot of trouble, and I was one of those kids that found trouble, and trouble found me. So people put me into a place where I could spend my time, whether it was boxing or playing basketball or theater or singing. And it just one thing led to another. When I got to college, thinking I could be a basketball player, and when I got my shot blocked too many times, I realized I better go somewhere where I stood taller. And I stood a little more taller on the stage. And once I was prompted to commit myself to it, I was challenged by Lofton Mitchell, the great Lofton Mitchell, who we need to learn more about. He said if I gave it 1 year of my life and just forgot about everything else, that it would take me places I wouldn't be able to imagine. I was a sophomore in college, and so I gave it that year, and that year, my whole world opened up, and I was places that I couldn't imagine. And
that's as an actor. You were acting
as an actor.
Yeah.
And what happened is as I continued to act and learn my craft and find myself privileged and blessed to be in the company of people who were extremely talented. And many of them extremely generous to me. They had given me so much knowledge and taught me so much, even just sometime watching their example. People like Adolph Caesar, Graham Brown, Douglas Turner Ward, Lloyd Richards, George C. Wolfe. It got to the point where I just said, I can't take this with me. My mortality is somewhere down the line. We all have to face that sometime, and I need to disseminate what has been given to me. So I needed to be able to give that to other people. And the best way I could do it is directing and sitting in a room and sharing that. And then also I was incredibly disturbed by what had been ripped, torn, battered, stolen, and raped out of our people as far as the images of who we were. And so I wanted to kind of do my part in trying to turn that ship a little bit and make the images and the people of the people who I knew growing up, whether they were literate, illiterate, whether they were homeless, jobless, on the streets, hustlers, or teachers. The examples that they set for me in that part of life balance, the examples I had learned in the educational system. And the thing that they offered me incredibly well was integrity. And they always said that the one thing can never be for sale is your integrity. So I may not, they say I may not be able to read, but I'm proud of who I am, and I know I'm a man, and I know that I'm worthy of being on this earth, and never let anybody take that. So half of my fight was the fight to straighten out some of those wrongs, and to project images on stage, not only from me portraying them, but for me being responsible for a group of people and making sure that they pay homage to our ancestors and show them as whole human beings. So as a director, I have never ever put a character on stage that wasn't real, that wasn't whole.
It's interesting, both of you, I think in slightly different ways, but speak of coming to directing, it seems to me, as a place where you can have some executive power and sort of producing power to make a difference in the way that things get represented, right? Yes. And so that directing was a place for you to do that. You said that in terms of your own work as an actor and wanting to tell stories, be able to tell different stories and tell them in different ways, and you similarly. I wonder, just because, I mean, and maybe this is a lot of inside baseball for directing people, but I wonder if, without trash talking anybody necessarily, but was there also, just in terms of really thinking about directing and the craft, you both used that word also, the craft of directing, did you see that either you learned some craft from people and knew that you could do something different with that craft as a director, or did you have experiences where you thought, I can see these directors who don't know what I need and what needs to be done, and therefore that teaches me how to do and what to do. Did any of that happen also?
Of course. I mean, I've been doing this as making a living for over 40 years, almost 40 years. And yes, I've seen some directors that couldn't offer or supply what an actor may need to get to a different place, or didn't know how to be effective with certain actors, and they were stuck in their ways. Sometimes it was because of their ego, and sometimes it was because of their incompetence. But there's been way more times that I've seen very competent directors, and still everybody doesn't have people skills. And especially if you haven't been an actor before, a lot of times you don't know what actors don't like. Sometimes you don't know. And many times, as an actor, I know I can save me on stage all day long. But sometimes I look on and see other actors, and my job as an actor is not to save them. And if I try to save them, I'm overcompensating. So I have to stay in my lane so there's no accidents happen. But the thing is, as a director, I can actually help you.
And you could see that there were these actors you worked with, say, in situations where they weren't getting that kind of...
Yeah, but sometimes that actor is ego saying that he is in the right spot and he does have it. And those are some really hard situations. And as a young actor, when I was a young actor, the only recourse I would have is to run circles around him. And I literally would run circles around that actor that thought he was very arrogant and knew everything. And I was like, and you ain't there, buddy. And they're running around screaming and hollering and get one little review and chest poked out and acting. And it would be like embarrassing. Then I said, Ruben, what are you doing? All I can do is give to that person. The more I can give to them and absorb from them, then not only does that make them better, it makes me better. So I would let them pump their chest and finally look over and say, wow, this guy is actually really laughing or really crying, or he really said something that meant something. And that's the only way I could teach them. I couldn't teach them by upstaging them. I could teach them by staying in my lane.
And so then you saw what, as a director, how you could impact that.
I could actually pull an actor to the side and ask them questions, a la Lloyd Richards, and get them to go where they needed to be. I can empower them by giving them something that they were missing, whether it was confidence, whether it was dramaturgy, whether it was technique. I can, after doing I've done over 110 plays. So after doing over 110 plays, I had to learn something. So sometimes I can teach an actor how to do something with his voice, how to say something, how to stand, how to act like an actor said to me yesterday. One of my actors called me, he's doing a play in another city, and he was just upset with his director and said, she's got me doing this scene with my back to the audience, and it's just, I said, that's beautiful, baby. I said, I'm one of the best back actors in the business. I said, because people expect my face. They expect these big eyes and this energy. And for me to drop it and turn my back to you for a second, and you see my shoulders drop or my shoulders come up, I said, you just be like, oh, what was that about? And I said, embrace that, baby, embrace that. You can. I said, you can work that. And he was like, yeah, boss, yeah, coach, thanks, coach. But anyway.
But how about your answer to that, Justin? Just in terms of specifically the crafts of directing, what were you seeing about what was going on in the theater that you were part of that led you to think that I could do this, or I want to because I can see what I can bring to it?
I think the craft of directing is a lot about understanding what's going on between people. Like what's the energy beneath the words that's exchanged, because otherwise we can just read the play. So what's the difference of reading the play ourselves and then we translate it, we bring this energy onto the stage and we're translating the energy of what's happening. And I still feel that a lot of directing, we don't spend enough time figuring out like what's really happening in the text, like what's going on between people. And so it's hard when you have a vision for what's happening in the text, and that's not and there's no process that's allowing that to come out, and particularly in regards to, for me though, again, it goes back to story. What story is being told, and are we prepared to tell certain stories? Are we uncovering certain lives? Are we prepared to have certain voices on stage? Are we prepared to direct those voices on stage? And I found myself more and more feeling like, oh, I want to hear this voice. There's a certain voice there's a certain transformation I want to see because I need it in my life, So I want to see these things happening on stage. They just kind of naturally, again, led me to the craft of directing, which is really the craft of shaping relationships in one point.
That leads in a way to my other question. Thinking about the two of you and the history of the work that you've both done, particularly as directors, and kind of where you're making your names as directors. Interesting to me that you, Justin, have, at least from what I see of the work that you do, a particular relationship to Shakespeare's plays and a particular lens that you want to bring to that work as a director and to those great classical texts. And I would say similarly for Ruben, in my experience of your directing, there's a particular thing that you bring to the work of August Wilson. Interesting that we often, I've heard this a lot, we will call August Wilson America's Shakespeare, or the Bard, America's Bard. These two playwrights with these large bodies of work, which is, I mean, how as directors you approach that is a whole other interesting thing. But I wonder, for both of you, with those two playwrights, both have a kind of classic, established sense of who they are and how their plays work. What are the particular things that each of you, that you bring, say, to Shakespeare, that you particularly find unique in your approach, maybe, as a director, both in the just rehearsal work or in the larger conceptualizing of it that you do, that makes what you do with Shakespeare unique, and then the same with you and Wilson. But why don't we...
Well, I'll start with, I've considered myself, like many, a child of August Wilson's legacy, and grew up inspired and driven by August Wilson. And when I was a young artist in my early 20s, it was the 90s, and really in regional theater, August Wilson was the only thing that was really exciting to me, that was happening, that was going on. But I didn't see a lot of space for me in the theater, I just didn't know where I fit in. Like I said, there wasn't much I could audition for, there wasn't much I could direct, that I could be allowed to direct. And then, my natural inclination was to want to direct August Wilson. I loved August Wilson, but everybody would always steer me away from August Wilson.
Why?
Interesting. And when a lot of white artistic directors would caution me, no, you don't want to be that. You don't want to just grow up to just show that you can direct August Wilson plays. And
So you'd be pigeonholed, somebody thought.
So I could spend a whole lifetime doing August Wilson plays and be happy. That's how I felt. But I saw, like, practically speaking, then they already had their black director. You see what I'm saying? Most all theaters had their black August Wilson director, and so there was no place for me to get in. So I was like, oh.
Where is this in your
Seattle?
point?
I'm in Seattle a lot,
Right.
But I'm looking out all across the country.
Yep,
I've always been looking around, and then so some professors in graduate school would say, look at Shakespeare, and I'd be like, okay, but I wasn't that turned on to Shakespeare. But who got me turned on to Shakespeare was Avery Brooks, who is a really important mentor and teacher to me, holds a really dear place in my life. Avery invited me to be a part of a production of King Lear at Yale Rep, where he reimagined it as King Lear as one of the African kings who had come over to America 3,000 years before Columbus, and we're going to build that world, and it blew my mind. I was like, whoa, and how
directed by Hal Scott,
Hal
right?
Scott directed it. I mean, we had a really incredible cast of folk, some really incredible people.
And you played Edgar.
And I played Edgar. And I also was invited to, because I do capoeira, to create a movement vocabulary for how we move in this world. And it opened my eyes to, like, I had never thought about that idea, like about being black in Shakespeare. I hadn't thought of that, And then it really like opened me up, like, whoa. And I started to think about music. I started to think about like American classical music, quote unquote, classical music, which is jazz, and how jazz musicians will take a European form and revamp it, in a way that doesn't erase what it doesn't replace, it doesn't challenge, it expands the reach. Like listen to John Coltrane, My Favorite Things, versus Julie Andrews sing My Favorite Things, two very different things, but both of them are beautiful. And I started thinking more, well, why don't we do that in theater? Why don't we, why are we so conservative in feeling, especially something like Shakespeare, where you're gonna, if you don't like what I do, just wait a week and you're gonna see another.
Someone else to do it.
It's gonna be of the exact same production in tights how you like it to be, or however, So then, like I said, that idea opened me up to which I then found, like, wow, there's a lot here for me to do, But I still loved August Wilson, and I still consider myself a child, and Dominique Morisseau and Couture and all the, But for me, I've learned also that black theater is a big thing. It's as much about how you do something as much as it is what you do.
Just to go back, just to poke at a little bit, that when you were talking about you and Shakespeare, and it sort of allows you to do something, right? What is that? What does it? I mean, I suspect it's what you talked at first about was just representing stories that are meaningful to you through people who look like you, and right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. But as a director, what are you doing when you're in there with grappling with Shakespeare and these ideas?
Well, it's great writing. I love being in the room with great writing,
right?
Of whoever you're dealing with. And there's no, the more I was able to find my way into Shakespeare, and the more I was able to find out what's happening between the people and what's being said, it's like, whoa, this is some cold stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Can we curse? Yeah, we can curse.
There's some cold shit that's happening here, in the same way that, like I say, it's not better or worse. It's just great. It's great writing,
right?
And so when you have great writing, you have opportunity for great performance, for great relationship. I don't just liken it to just Shakespeare is unique. Now Shakespeare writes in a way that he leaves a lot of room for it's not about having a big set and all the scenes and you create hyper realistic locations Shakespeare is not about that, So a lot of the aesthetic that he works in is actually pretty fluid, and then it leaves there's room, you have to at one level, no matter who you are, you have to come and fill in a lot of holes with Shakespeare culturally to fill in the world, you know? And we're all, anybody who's doing Shakespeare now is equally far apart. You know, people might look at the work that I'm doing and say, oh, you doing a, African Shakespeare, Black, that's really different. But it's not really different than what they're doing at the Shakespeare Theater in DC, you know? Because we're all very far from the original Shakespeare, you know?
And that seems to me a place where you as director can really have a collaborative relationship with playwright.
Part of the challenge with directing Shakespeare is figuring out how you're going to deliver it to a contemporary audience in a way that delivers what the play is about, but in a visceral way for a modern audience. Because Shakespeare also, like August Wilson, is very culturally specific in his jokes, in his time, in his language. So a lot of that stuff is like, how do you get a contemporary audience to really viscerally feel some of that? And that's what a lot of directors are trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, and some of that stuff that's so specific maybe just doesn't land anymore. But I like what you say about all the room. That's something I think about too, that Shakespeare really does write in big metaphors, and there's a lot of space that needs to get filled up. Even when he produced those plays at the time, they were quite distant in many instances.
That's right. It took a lot of license, and playing with history, but not history, but history, but not history.
It's interesting. Maybe not to jump too far ahead towards August Wilson, but I think there's a provocative thing to discuss in that too when these two playwrights, because it does seem to me, you said it, Shakespeare leaves a lot of room and is not, in most cases, imagining anything quite naturalistic or realistic in representation on the stage, whereas Wilson does more so. Each of the plays is set in a different decade of the 20th century in America, and there's some specificity there. I've heard people ask this question, actually you and I think talked about this the other day. People ask, to my mind, what is a provocative question about if it's possible in Shakespeare to imagine actors of different races and ethnicities in those parts, why isn't it possible in August Wilson's plays to imagine white people playing those parts? And I mean, I think we, in a way, kind of all know the answer, but I do think in that answer is also the answer to what you're doing. It's because the works are different in that way, and the larger goals are different ones too. In some ways, but then the overarching bigger goal is all the same. How do we show ourselves to ourselves in the most deep and complex and humane ways, right? But you laugh. Have you heard that before? Had you ever heard that?
It's ridiculous, and this is ridiculous because of it. Now, I think every acting student, I don't care what color you are, I think you should be challenged to work on August Wilson's work. I don't care what color you are, in class.
Why?
Class, because of the humanity issues, about the relationship issues, about communication, about the poetry.
Exactly.
But August Wilson wrote these plays the same reason Langston Hughes wrote his poems, the same reason Zora Neale Hurston wrote her books. It's a conservation, it's a preservation of a culture. It's very specific. It is no room, in my opinion, at all to start placing that culture in somebody else's hands. There are black people that don't understand August Wilson. I have worked with some of them. They do not want to do the research. We're not all from 1929 and 1911, 1906 and 1967. I'm from a lot of them eras. But listen, the man was trying to leave us something so we never forgot it. Shakespeare wasn't doing that. Shakespeare was writing them up, and I spent a lot of, my first master's degree is from the Hillberry Classical Repertory Theater. I was the black actor in that classical repertory theater company, the only classical repertory theater company in a graduate department in the nation. The only brother in there. Because a teacher told me my lips were too big to do Shakespeare, and I was too street. Too street, and I am street. And my lips are big. But I can do Shakespeare. And I've done 17 of them. And might do the rest of them. But this is the deal. August spent his life trying to make sure that we had something that no one could ever take or confuse. He wasn't trying to make any mistakes, doing anything, you know, this moving into another generation. And while when you start trying to make August better or different than what he did, you're not doing his play. You're not doing his play. You know, you can take Godot and put 3 black guys in it, and you can take Beckett, you can take Chekhov, you can do all that stuff, because they weren't trying to get something that they had lost, which is their culture, which that other people had damaged, which and people ran away from at different times. People wanted to forget that we were country. I had a young lady audition for me the other day for the Dominique Morisseau play that I'm directing, Skeleton Crew. And I spoke to her, and she was hitting the rhythms, because Dominique writes like August. Now, if you write a line like, yeah, I'll take some of that coffee, I need something to keep me woke up. Now, I know that. I've heard that. Not, I need something to keep me awake. I need something to keep me woke up. Or when she left, I was so lonesome. Not lonely, lonesome. You know, yeah, they locked me up for uselessness. Talking about, Judge, give me 30 days for worthlessness. Oh, that was funny. No, that's the truth. Black people got locked up for worthlessness. That's history. That's culture. That's our culture. That's what happened to us. So the sister's auditioning for me, and she's hitting Dominique's rhythms. And I said to her, I said, where you from? She says, I'm from D.C. And I said, I knew you were from the South somewhere, because she said, hold on now. Hold on, right now. I'm going to tell you this right now. Do not get D.C., do not get it twisted. D.C. is not from the South. I said, slow down, little girl. I said, slow down now. I don't know if they told you yet. I'm the director here. I said, you know, I stood up, I said, listen, it's okay. We all from the South somewhere. Because it's only a couple ships landed in New Hampshire. The rest of them landed. I said, my people I tracked them down to Mackenzie, Alabama, and couldn't find out where they came from before Mackenzie. But I know that's where the first slaves in my family was, in Mackenzie, Alabama. Now I want to find out, I got to get all the way to Africa. So I said, you know, we all from the South. If you from Seattle, they came up from Texas, they came up from Arkansas, Oklahoma. If you from Buffalo, they came up from Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, you know. If you from Chicago, they came up from Mississippi, you know, Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? We came up, we had to come up. So I'm saying, so baby, it's okay to be. I said, I made a whole career playing Southern boys. I said, from Pearly Victorious to Kane Well, Corporal Cobb. I said, you know, everybody I played was country. You know, I said, so it's okay to be country, baby. So if you want this role, country up. She got country, but she didn't get the role. But the thing is you know, August wrote these plays until we get later in his cycle. They're all northern colored people. They were colored when they was in the South, and they moved north, and the only thing changed was their location. And it's like, these are proud, wonderful, God-fearing, salt-of-the-earth people. And their ways are so, the way they court, the way they dance, the way they get mad, the way they lean and wear their clothes. And when the kids don't do that research, when they don't honor 1948, there's something's wrong. You know, if 1948, it wasn't nothing for a guy to grab a girl by the hand and say, come here, girl, let me talk to you. You do that now, you draw back a nub. It's a different era. But so when they start to wiggling and you know, dudes is doing this, you know, they playing Boy Willie, they auditioning for me, yo, you know, I'm taking that piano. And I'm like, yo, bro, what era is this in? Where are we at? You know, stop, going out the room, come back tomorrow. You can come back tomorrow, I'll give you a chance, because you ain't there. And then they say, Rube, you know, and then the rumor goes around, Rube think it's only one way to do August Wilson. It is, do it right. Do it right. Honor. You know, you can't come in and do Ma Rainey with a Brooklyn accent. I mean, you really, that ain't Ma Rainey. Anyway, don't.
Well, but you're actually kind of doing it, answering my question. But I wondered if, in specific ways, you could say what you, as a director of August Wilson's, what are the first things you think about are your job to do as director, and what are the priorities? What are you doing when you approach one of those plays?
First of all, honor the play, honor the writing, honor the mission of what that writer was doing.
Okay.
That's the first thing I got to serve. Everybody in that room got to serve that play.
And how are you going to do that?
First of all, I'm going to know everything that I possibly can find out about the play.
All right.
And I'm going to put the right people in the roles to play the roles. You know, the people have come in equipped, ready, and willing to do the work to gain what they don't have. and willing to listen, willing to cooperate, willing to be a collaborator. Because I'm a collaborative director. I'm not a tyrant. You know, I'm strong and I'm powerful and I know what I want and I ain't gonna take no bullshit and I don't want no faking. It's all about communication. You talked about it before. What's actually going on in there? Because acting is just communication. It's trying to communicate for a reason. What you as the actor got to find out what's that reason. The writer told you how you're going to make the communication. The style of that communication comes from you. And the director sits there and tell you whether that made sense, whether that was clear. And so I'll sit there, all I want to know is if an actor does something, instead of me telling them don't do that shit, I say, what did that mean? And if they don't know what it meant, or if they tell me it meant something that don't serve the play, I say, well, you got to put that in your nightclub act. Because that don't fit this play. You know, you had a purpose when you came in that room. Did I see you go for that purpose? How did you feel when you went in that room? How did you feel when you left that room? And what was the residue when you came into the room again? So it's like, you know, the thing about an August Wilson play is every character that walks in the room, the play becomes about them. No one walks in the room and stands in the corner in an August Wilson play. They come in the room, I see y'all still back up in the alley. You know, they come right in the thing. These niggas done gone crazy. They busting out the goddamn windows talking about they ain't gonna work. Soon as you come in the room, it's about you. They gonna give me my money. Talk about what piece of paper? What piece of paper? They gonna give me my money. You know, it's like whoever walked into that room, it's about them. Because, you know why? Because this is just my interpretation. Because black people don't get to say what they want to say in the world without some ramifications. They come into an arena where they can talk, and we talk. We come into that arena, and I come in from a rooming house. So I seen the best in the world rocking tours come in there and start rapping about what's going on in the world. They be out in the world, yes, sir. And also about, no, I'll be there in the morning, son. 9 o'clock, they come in there. You can't believe what this white man told me. Man, I'll kick him in his ass. And when he said, you know, no, I'll make my money. You know, it's like they come in there and have a place to talk. And black, it was a guy that used to come in Nanny's rooming house. His name was Wilbur Martin. Wilbur Martin, as a child, every Friday, Wilbur Martin would come in Nanny's rooming house. And when he came into the door, I don't care what was going on in the rooming house. When the door opened, he said, my name Wilbur Martin. I don't bother nobody. And one day I asked Nanny, I said, Nanny, why Wilbur Martin? You've heard this story. Yes. I said, why Wilbur Martin every time? This is after 4 years of me every Friday night. Wilbur he always had his hair cut. He's a good-looking black man, you know. And he walked in and said, "My name Wilbur Martin." I said, "Nanny, why Wilbur Martin always say his name? We know that's Wilbur, and we know he don't bother nobody." I said, "Why do you always say that?" And Nanny said to me, "Wilbur Martin killed a man." Now I'm a child. I don't know so why that make him say I don't bother nobody. So he letting you know when he come in, I don't want no trouble with no one. I'm Wilbur Martin. Y'all know I don't want trouble. So as a child, I didn't understand it, but as an adult, I became to understand the ways of Northern colored people. That was his introduction, peace. Like a brother might say, yo, peace, my brother. That's Wilbur Martin. I don't bother nobody. It's peace, my brother. It took a while. You know what I'm saying? That's what August Wilson is honoring. So when I'm teaching August Wilson at Yale and in Juilliard and these places that I go and then they begging me for an August Wilson workshop, I want the white kids to do it too. I let the white kids do Floyd and Vera. I just don't let the white kids they got arrested for worthlessness and uselessness. You know, they don't understand that is a part of black culture, not crossing the street, spitting on the sidewalk, loitering because you ain't got $2 in your pocket. You know? Uselessness. What much money you got in your pocket? I got no money, sir. You useless. 30 days. You'd be like, wait a minute, man. So I pay respect to August and what he did. And August and I spent numerous hours as animated as I am now. He is equally as animated. And that's the love and the brothership and the kinship that allowed me to feel that I had. But I tell you, I have to say this in closing. It has a lot.
You're not closing. You're never closing.
I'm talking about just this. It has a hell of a lot to do with who you cast. And people get upset with me because I cast a lot of the same. But I know what Brandon's going to do. I know what Chuck's going to do. I know what J-Dub. I know what Jason Dearden's going to do. They get me. They don't get offended. If I tell Brandon know me. If I say, Brandon, nothing cute, he gets it. Because Brandon will give you eyes and lick his lips. And Brandon know me. Once he did that the first time, I said, Brandon, no cute. No cute. You can't fool me. I'm
Well,
smarter than
that is one of the things that you've done as director that is also a little bit related to your executive role, which is that you've almost created a company of August Wilson actors who follow you around.
I follow them. I beg them to.
Well, yeah, but they follow you too. But you've also created that in this very collaborative way. You've done it also with your design teams, I noticed too. You often bring, and you have a language that you then develop.
But it's trust. When me and Karen Perry work, like we'll be in the first tech, and the actor come on with the costume the first time, and they'll walk across stage. I do like this, and Karen say, "Oh, okay, I got to dip the vest again." or the woman will walk through, and I look at Karen, and she say, "Okay, I got some other stuff for you to look at." I don't say a word. Same with Rui Rita. When Rui is doing lights, and I see something, I'm like, Rui, is that a 6? You bringing them down on a 6? Let's get to a 4.5. I need it just a little bit quicker, but I don't want to see it happen. I got to discover it. I can't see it. And Rudy's like, okay, do you know he's been on the phone working it into a 4.5? I swear to God, I have to apologize to him. He don't say nothing. He don't say, I had one lighting designer. I'd say, what's happening? Well, I know. Everything I say was I know. If I say, it's too much magenta, I know. I said, if you say I know one more thing, I said, let me tell you something. If you know so damn much, why isn't it done? Why am I calling your name? I said, get Louis Rita on the phone. But yeah, I keep them with me, man, because it's also trust and it's also my insecurity. It's knowing that they're going to take care of me.
Were you going to say something?
About, well...
you looked like, but...
Well, I mean, that's going back on the point of August Wilson and white actors doing August Wilson, because that's a big, and it's only going to get more hotter and hotter, and for me, I think as Ruben alluded to it some, like there's artistic value in the exercise of actors changing cultural perspectives, and at one level to play race, because we don't really talk about it in that way, and white people are not at all, comfortable of playing race, playing, in a way that's conscious. So I mean, I think at one level in an ideal theater,
it's so loaded,
right? It's a load, but it's all loaded. Playing a Southerner is loaded. Playing a New Yorker.
We heard from your actress that I'm not Southern. Yeah,
right. So I mean, but because all these terms are loose. So I mean, I think in an ideal world, the theater is make believe. There's room creatively to do anything in theater. Anybody can play anything in an ideal theater, as we kind of talked about. Yeah. That said, though, we have to be honest and see, do we have an ideal theater? Do we have equal access to the theater? You see what I'm saying? If we were working in a world where we actually had equal access, then you can kind of get away with doing what you want and experiment and taking chances. And this is something interesting to do August Wilson in China and see how, just as Arthur Miller took salesmen over there and said, well, let's see what happens. And it's interesting, like what happens when these cultural intersections happen. But, however, going back to, you cannot deny the history specifically of white supremacy in the theater and its role and its function and what happened. Right? I mean, black people were not only ignored in the theater, black people were assaulted in the theater, culturally.
Right here in New York.
Yeah.
Right here in New York, and I mean culturally, like assaulted physically, but assaulted spiritually, assaulted mentally, said you are not a person and I'm going to show you why by performing in a way that makes you feel less than human. So black people still, we carry that weight when we go into a theater still to this day of, man, am I going to be assaulted? Going up here and watching this play, and we get August Wilson's writing, Lorraine Hansberry's writing, Alice Childress' writing, Ntozake Shanga's writing. Their writing is a response to the white supremacy that kept us out, out at best and assaulted at worst. So then to take this body of work, where August said, I'm going to create this body to help get us into the theater, to help get our voices into the theater so that you see us and hear us as full human beings, complete, right? That's the function of his writing. So to ignore that function is to miss the whole point of his body of work.
Also, excuse me, but to do it in Chinese, to do it anywhere, let the Chinese come in and experience it, because this is where we're sharing. This is where we're giving you us. The theater brings people together quicker than anything in the world. It brings you to another person's reality is quicker than anything in the world. Quicker than a painting that you can examine or a dance show that you can interpret. The theater immediately makes it visceral and makes it the living and breathing, and you experience their experience that moment. So all of a sudden you're in a black house. If we do piano lesson in China, ain't no Chinese person in the world know how to straighten a little black girl's hair. They don't know where to put the grease on the back of their hand. They don't know how to lay the towel on the corner of the table and your shoulder. They don't know how to hold their hip and fan that damn hot comb. You know, that is a black thing. Another culture will take it and do the hair a whole different way. They'll take and heat that comb up and take that grease out the thing like this and put it on the hair and mess it up. Black folk do it. I've seen them mess it up. So it's like they ain't seen their mama. Ain't no person in China know the smells in my mama's kitchen. Ain't no person in any other culture can tell me what my mama house smelled like on New Year's Eve. When she got them chitlins cooking, when she got them black-eyed peas in the pot, when she's in there making that sauce meat, I don't care how pungent that smell, I'm comfortable because I'm home. And I know my mama's home. And I know that my house is full of laughter, and that my daddy got the black velvet under the table. It might be a little moonshine over there. And my brothers is home from school, and we're gonna play some ball at the community center and drink some wine on the corner, because that's my neighborhood. And can't nobody duplicate it. And can't no white director bring it to them. They need a black cast. If it's gonna be a white director, it's gotta be a black cast. With a white director, you got to step aside, because this is the way this is done. Today, sister called me from another play. They called me. I guess I'm the actor whisperer, you know, because they know. She says she's working on a play. It's a black play, white director, and she said, I'm tired of explaining things to him. So what should I do? I said, get in another play. No, I said, I got a play coming in February. I'd love you to be in, but you know, she got to work now. But I said, sister, what you got to do is pull him to the side. Don't embarrass him, because he's in a position of leadership, and he wants to be a good leader in front of everybody. So if you guys got a problem with that, pull him to the side in a very private, just you and him. You ain't got to bring a group. Just say, we're sensitive to this. And that's the new language for I ain't doing that shit. Black people's new language is, I'm sensitive to that. That mean I ain't doing it. You know what I'm saying? But dig, I like Jitney, for instance. Chisholm told me that a woman stopped him in the street, couldn't even speak English, Korean woman, saw Jitney, and was telling him, my mama, my dad, my she saw the play and couldn't even speak English, and knew that was human, and that's in the fact that we, black people, Boricua people, Latino, that we're human in somebody else's eyes, that we have been scorned and beat down to be less than human forever. People, foreigners walk into the city and look at me like I'm robbing if I'm trying to get something else on my Metro card. I'm standing Metro card just coming up here now. Let me fatten up a Metro card. The next machine was like, I said, they must be foreigners, because I'm gonna put some money on my Metro card. You know, I'm having a suit coat on and my shirt is clean, and you think I'm robbing you and mess up my boots tonight? You know, but I'm saying, because in their mind, the images of who we are will never measure up to who they are, because we're not holding up the measuring stick. We're letting other people hold up the measuring stick. As a director, I'm holding up the measuring stick, and my people gonna measure up.
But I hear in what Justin's saying something actually quite moving and maybe profound related to this too, that in that notion of the ideal theater that doesn't exist, that we have some things to do to get to that ideal theater. Maybe we'll never get there. But as a kind of thought experiment, you seem to be an optimist in this way. Do you see us getting there? And this may confuse the matter or mix the ideas, but I wonder if there is something in the work of, say, August Wilson and other contemporary American playwrights, but that we believe maybe does transcend time. Would those be plays that might be done in 400 years and maybe be done by mixed race companies, or is the trajectory of the ideal of the theater that parallels the ideal of a world, does it lead to a place where everybody owns August Wilson, just like everybody owns Shakespeare?
I think everybody does have some ownership of August Wilson, but to honor the culture, you must know the culture.
Right.
You can't put on stage something you don't know. So you're putting on a lie on stage if you don't really know it. Right now, the Mountaintop is being done with a white actor. I think it just closed in Ohio. Katoriya is not happy about that, from what I understand. When a white actor plays Martin Luther King, now if you want to read Martin Luther King's speeches, that's cool to me. I would encourage that for a student in my acting class. I don't care what color you are. I would encourage you to read Malcolm X and read it out loud. Let me hear you get as angry as Malcolm. Let me hear you get as poetic and angry as Martin, because Martin was angry too. Let me hear the poetry in that. Let me hear you work with that. I can work with you as an actor. I don't care what color you are doing that. But to come on my stage that I'm directing something and you're going to be Martin Luther King? Not in my production, in that ideal theater y'all gonna make.
Right.
But I'll be dead. I'll be dead, so I'll be. They say, "Oh, Ruben is rolling over." But listen, man, and I've had the opportunity to play. I guess the Tony kind of validated it a little bit, and they've given me opportunity to play a lot of roles that would go to white guys, and white guys get mad about it. I played Ricky Roma in David Mamet's, Glengarry Glen Ross.
You played King Henry VIII.
Yeah, Henry VIII and Leontes, but that's Shakespeare. A lot of brothers do Shakespeare. If you got a name, they'll let you do Shakespeare. But the thing is, when you play Ricky Roma, though, because we're not talking about going back into Shakespeare, we're talking about somebody everybody know, Joe Mantegna and Al Pacino and these guys, and to see me to bring some brother to Ricky Roma. I mean, of course, I had the Ricky Roma gab, I was real cool when I was cool, but all of a sudden I would say, sit your ass down. And they'd be, oh, he's the brother. And the little dude would sit down. I said, listen, this is Ricky. This is me. Would I do that? Would I talk to you that way? So yeah, I can play that game too. But I don't think that I was stepping on nothing that was sacred to them. If I was, I apologize. But they asked me to play the damn thing, but anyway.
Well, just maybe the last thing that gets you guys talking about before we open up to the folks here. One of the things that Justin and I were talking about in relationship to the two of you as artists, but also as responsible citizens, I would say, of this country and of the world. You bring a lot of that sense of your responsibility to people, to our people, to the culture, to what's going on in society, to what's going on politically, into your work. I wonder, in all of your multi-hyphenate ways, how much are you thinking about that sort of thing all the time? Justin was saying specifically the notion of Black Lives Matter as a force and an idea to notice that lives in the theater, and the work that we do in the theater is something that you think about. I just wonder for both of you, because I know you also write, you teach, you act, you direct, and same with you. Like what of that, where do some of those desires and needs make their way into your life as an artist?
Well, it goes, I think, to that gets at like, what's the function of art? And what's the function, how do I see my function of art and being an artist? And a lot of that, I've got to take inspiration from the West African griot, right? I mean, my function is similar with the griot's function is to tell the stories to help the people remember who they are. And without those stories, you run the risk of literally forgetting who you are. And I see, my function in that tradition, of really trying to celebrate to the people who they are, and looking at the context of the times that we're living in today, that we are inheriting a world, a country, a stage that has assaulted Black life. And continues to assault Black life, literally and figuratively. And the Black Lives Matter movement is nothing new in that regard. It's a movement that says Black is beautiful. It's a movement that says, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. You know, I mean, these are same notions that that continue to emerge that evidence the fact that we still don't feel at home in our home. You know, and one thing that makes you feel at home is hearing voices that are familiar to you, hearing stories that are familiar to you, hearing rhythms that are familiar to you. As Ruben talked about his neighborhood, and these are the things we want to see our reflection in the world around us. And we don't think how profoundly disturbing and damaging it is to not see your reflection in the world. And that's something that, you know, that comes with white privilege, with not knowing what it means to not see yourself every time you turn on the television, every time you go see a play, every time you go to the airport, every time you go to the bank, every time, you know, you just take for granted. But when you have to like literally count to find yourself in the world, what kind of relationship that creates in you, in your society. So then I use this theater as a tool to help say and help remind, you know, Black lives matter. Black lives to celebrate the humanity of who we are.
And collaborating with Shakespeare is, for you, a primary way of doing that. But also you're working...
Well, I think it's celebrating the Black aesthetic, you know, and anything Black people touch, it becomes something new and wonderful. And that sharing that possibility is part of the genius of Black people, Blackness, Black culture. Black people, when you know, African American tradition hits Christianity goes in a whole different direction. When African American experience hits cuisine, it goes in a whole different direction. When it hits dance, it goes in a whole different direction. Same thing, but with theater, people have been very, very, no, you got to do it this way, and you got to speak this way, and you got to, you know, and have been silently, without saying anything, keeping Blackness at bay. You know, and there's a new generation, there's a movement that says, we here, and you going to have to see us, deal with us, and learn to love us.
Great, yeah.
Well, you know, the, excuse me, in the real big scheme of things, I'm like a speck of dust in the world. It really insignificant, really don't matter, you know, to come up out of Ruben House in Lackawanna, New York, and then suddenly, not suddenly, but over a period of time, became vital in a way in this thing called theater. People responded to what I've done, and in some way validated me as a human being because I'm talented. They like to validate people of color for talent, whether it's athletic or artistic. They rarely value our intellect. In this thing called theater, I've had the opportunity to matter in the biggest way, because suddenly, even though this is a smaller group, suddenly microphones and newspaper people are in my face all the time. People want to know what I know. That means they value my intellect, not only my passion. So, and if they only value my passion, they're gonna get my intellect when they put that mic on me. So I found that this speck of dust can actually make a difference through this art. So when you give me a role on a show like a Castle that I spent 3 years, I played a police captain that people wanted hollering and screaming at people. You can watch that 3 years and you don't see me scream once, because I determined that since I am the authority, I use my authority through my passion, my intellect, my power is in who I am. So I would just look at Beckett and say, and she knew what that meant. So in theater, it's similar. I can't just do this. I produce and direct the entire production and line that entire production from head to toe, bottom to top, side to side, fill it to the brim with integrity. So once we hit that stage, when you leave a Ruben Santiago-Hudson production, you have changed somehow, or I have not done my job. If you have not morphed just a little bit, or maybe a lot, that is what makes my life worth something, that I can go out and be a spokesman in the most positive way about the people who have been maligned, beat down, but have showed me the most love in the world. And that's my people. Whether they have been the Puerto Rican side of my family or the African American side of my family, they are who empowered me and told me that I was somebody when nobody else did. Then where they made the I don't know, I wouldn't say it's a mistake because it was a blessing, the white society empowered me. They said, this dude is special. So all of a sudden people want to know what I want to say. You know what I want to say? I want to celebrate my people in the way they should be celebrated. Completely, wholly, disdainful and magnificent and beautiful, the way County Cullen would say it. You know, and I said, and so if I have that opportunity, I will not squander one opportunity to scream the glory of my people. I will not squander, not one.
I was going to ask both of you if there was one aspect of your multi-hyphenates that allowed you to do that thing that you're both talking about more or better. But actually what I think is true is that the two of you as these kinds of artists are grasping and grabbing at all the opportunities and through all of your talents and finding avenues within yourselves towards all different kinds of talents that, because in all ways I think everything about what each of you does is getting at those larger ambitions, which are very profound.
I have to say this though, John. I have to say this, and I have to acknowledge this. You know, John Diaz is the artistic director of Two River Theater Company, and I don't think John has turned down any opportunity to highlight everybody. He has a Latino Playwrights Festival. Ain't many regional theaters do that. He opened up the doors for that. I mean, he's developing, I just got to say who you are. He's developing black musicals, black dramas, Latino musicals, you know, gay, straight, lesbian, transgender. It does not matter. That's why people wonder, well, Rube, you come all the way to Two River and work, but you won't even come over to the so-and-so, or you won't come to the Guthrie, or you won't go to the Cincinnati, because he embraces us all. It ain't because of my status. It's because it's important to John that we all have a voice. And my voice and your voice, and none of it don't matter if we don't have a platform. He provides a platform, and it's a reason why I take my ass over to Two River Theater every year, because he provides that platform. And I ain't the only one there. I know the janitor, William. He can't wait till I get there. I mean, well, what's up, Will? You know, because everybody matters there, and it's rare when there's a theater that's run and it's not about the artistic director. Y'all sitting in this place right now, if you're actors or directors or writers, you name theaters and you'll name the artistic director. You didn't even know John Diaz, most of us, because the theater is not about John. It's about us, you know. And I just had to say that.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. But why don't we turn over to you folks and see if you have any questions for these guys or comments even about our conversation. Maybe jump in on the conversation in this way. Yeah. Ma'am. Miss, yes. Beautiful young woman.
I did actually have a comment.
Okay, please.
Start off with a comment rather than a question.
Sure.
About the long-discussed topic of white actors in August Wilson pieces. And one of the things I wanted to say was that I believe the reasons that white actors might have for wanting to inhabit a role let me say this. The reasons that black actors have for inhabiting traditionally white roles are completely different than the reasons that white actors might have for wanting to inhabit an August Wilson piece. I wrote down, because I was thinking about this, you know, in order to include multicultural actors in theater in a way that hasn't been done before, and not put them in traditionally white roles, you would lose the vast majority of the body of work that we have to work with in the theater. You know, anything 10, 15 years ago, and that's because theater was very exclusive not very long ago. And so I don't think most traditionally white roles are traditionally white because they're specifically white, as August Wilson pieces are. They're white because they were white by default, and there was no other option that they would allow.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important to include that reasoning because they're not interchangeable.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you can't just flip the switch and say that. So that's what I thought.
Good. I wonder, do I need to repeat that? Was that picked up on microphones?
Probably picked up.
Okay.
You're projecting pretty well.
No, that was that. Yeah, that felt. But thank you. Right. That's,
Well, I think there's there's an impulse though to always be like, well, what if black people can do this, and to kind of try and equate, right, white supremacy with quote unquote black supremacy, or what I'm saying? There's a movement to try and do it, and it's just fundamentally flawed, false. Because of the history and the legacy though of how white supremacy operates. Because also we have to acknowledge like the history of cultural imperialism and cultural co-option that happens, that's happened, and that these writers, again, as I was saying, are writing as a response to. So to then take and put white actors in there is actually doing the opposite of what they were trying to do, and it has different implications. So, but always when we say, well, with white people, it's different. We can't equate the two, right? And we have to accept that.
I think one of the reasons we had the discussion, Justin and I were talking about it the other day, is it is a very provocative notion. It seems to me that white actors who are suggesting they would like to perform in August Wilson.
But I gotta say this. Sorry, but white people also need to learn how to watch and enjoy something. You
Absolutely.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's the feeling of like anything that's cool, I should be able to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
I totally do. I'm just saying that I've heard this myself a bunch, and I think one of the reasons I wanted to get these guys talking about it and people like you talking about it is because I think it's a very provocative thing, right? It's a touchy subject in a way and provocative, but in its provocation, it makes us say these things and think these things like that you did, that you actually had to write down. And it's making us maybe think about some things about how the theater works and how the aesthetics of the theater work and how the mechanics of the theater work and all the reasons why that are political and all other things and about representation, all kinds of other things that maybe people aren't thinking. I mean, in my experience, people, especially a lot of white people I talk to, are not thinking about a lot of that all that deeply. And I feel like if we're going to have this conversation where whatever it looks like, whatever it means, where we move the theater in an evolving way, that we evolve with our cultures, that we should be having the conversation. I'll just bring it back to Ruben, too. We did a play of Ruben's at my theater, a new play that Ruben's been working on for a while called Your Blues Ain't Sweet Like Mine, which is a play of the moment about 4 different people, 2 white people and 2 black people coming together in this unusual situation and talking about race in a very direct and specific way that gets very explosive. And I've been working with Ruben on this play for a while and really excited by the play. It's a beautiful play, and the evolution of his work on this play has been quite impressive and extraordinary, and its relationship to many of these issues and topics it's so rich and hits the nerve. And I was working with Ruben on the play when I took over running the theater 5 years ago, and I had every intention that we would keep working on this play so as to produce it there. And then, and immediately started programming at the theater plays that had black people and Latino people and gay people in it, and discovered in my audience, which is only 40 miles outside of New York City, that I had a predominance of people who really had a hard time with that.
Oh, it's New Jersey.
It's New Jersey. I didn't know. I'm an idiot. I lived for the last 25 years in Manhattan. I thought that bubble extended just over the river. It did not at all. And I got into a lot of trouble. And I thought the best thing to do is to just keep making the trouble happen, which will make the conversations happen. And so we did a play by Alice Childress, a beautiful play called Trouble in Mind, which if you don't know, you should. A really marvelous play set in the late 1950s about a theater company, putting a play on Broadway that is the first play on Broadway that deals directly with issues of race, of black and white people. in a play. And so the company is rehearsing this play, and the company consists of black and white people, and the play explodes around issues of race. And we did this production of this play that was written in 1959, quite lovely, beautiful production, really worked well, and many in the audience lost their minds. Because this issue of race was brought to the forefront and they were forced to talk about it. Well, I did that play thinking this gentle, sweet, lovely play by Alice Childress from 1959, in a gentle, lovely way in which she's dealing with these issues of race, would actually go over really well with the audience. And in fact, they wanted to run me out of town. I did that play right at the moment that we had committed to doing Ruben's play, which is not gentle, particularly. In the way that he's handling race. And yet, Ruben will attest. I mean, Ruben was there for we did a talk back after every single performance of the play, of his play.
We didn't plan a talk back after. They would not leave.
They would not leave the theater.
They just sat there.
And it was the most amazing thing to watch this community of audience go from 1 year where that was their experience. And I got really terrible hate mail letters from people.
Trouble in mind. They were leaving in the first scene.
Yeah.
I was looking at them like, where you going? There's trouble in mind.
Yeah. But we started the conversation, is what I was thinking. That was what, and people were then being forced to examine these things that we don't, even though it was written in 1959, it was still stunning to me that there are people in the world still not examining those issues in a very direct way that uses the power of the theater to make people feel connected to these things. But it started this thing that then was unbelievable. With the response and what people were saying. People were crying.
We were standing in the back and we weren't even playing a talk, but they wouldn't leave. They sitting there. So I said, should I go down and say something? I don't know what you think. I said, maybe they won't leave. So I went down and said, hello, and they clapped. Should we talk? And that happened every show. But let me tell you, there's only a couple black artistic directors in this country. I called one of them. They read my play and they said, I love this play, but I'm afraid my audience won't stay for it. I said, well, John Diaz was afraid his audience wouldn't stay for it either. And we didn't lose a person. I didn't see not a show that I was at, and I was at 80% of the show, not one person left that theater. Not one person left. They may go pee and come back, but no one walked out and got in their car. No one left. And I could not believe it because it gets hard. It gets like, it gets hard. But this brother said to me, I'd love to do your play because I want you down here. I said, you want me down here, but you don't want my play. I said, you ain't getting me. You can get my play, maybe. And I said, and as a matter of fact, I don't want my play at your theater if you don't think, I said, when are you going to take a chance and bet on something? What do you think makes great theater? What do you think made Chaikin's theater? What do you think made the public theater, Joe Papp? What do you think makes great theater? What do you think made the Negro Ensemble Company? They took a chance on Ed Bullins. They took a chance on Alice Childress. They took a chance on Lorraine Hansberry Lloyd did.
Mm-hmm. And I think, but it's no coincidence that audiences are unaccustomed or uncomfortable with shaking up.
Yes.
We have to acknowledge that, again, we have trained our audiences what is important and what's not important. Mm-hmm. And we spent hundreds of years teaching our audience that these lives are important and these lives are not. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And so now we in the American theater we have work to do. We are trying to train our audience how to value Black life on stage. And it doesn't happen overnight. But the optimism thing, I do believe that a good story has the power to transform hearts, And but people, like you say, we're like, well, but I don't know. Do I have faith? Do I have faith in this story? I don't know if I can bet on it. I don't know, and people are scared and nervous.
This artistic directors, they got no heart. But look, look at Tony Kushner.
Numbers,
look at the first Tony Kushner play.
Understand.
Look at Angels in America. Long as it was, and it was dealing with male, gay relationships, AIDS. I mean, Norma Hart did it, in a way first, but I mean, not the way Tony Kushner had expanded on it. You know what I'm saying? And he went in deep, and it's like they had to take a shot. They took a chance.
That's right. And so we got some people taking, and there's a lot of, theater that's happening that's teaching, that's trying to happen.
They're trying to feed their audience what the audience wants instead of feeding them what they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let these people ask them.
I think one of the things, I'm sure Shirley Basfield Dunlap, and we traveled here from Baltimore, Maryland
Wow.
for this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome.
But thank you. But I've traveled to your plays, I've traveled to your plays, and I've traveled to your plays. I specifically do that. But one of the things I have a challenge with is that we are led to believe that Shakespeare plays are to be done by white people, where, you know, Queen Elizabeth looked up and noticed that, you know, there was getting awfully dark in here, and that was because there was a population of Africans in England. I mean, we had Ben Jonson writing The Mask of Blackness. So, you know, I'm kind of disturbed when I hear about people that feel that we are being very creative and diverse when we have African Americans doing a Shakespeare play. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to blacken in what's been whitened out, mm-hmm. in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed your, especially coming up in the summer, I've had students who have been interns for the Shakespeare, your
Classical Theater
Halls,
mm-hmm. and your summer projects. I also wanted to say, as an African American who's been a member of what was SSDC and now SDC, and I'll try to remember that, that as a black woman, it is a challenge to be a part of the gang. I've directed. First of all, I come from the university that Sakina Ansari who is August Wilson's mm-hmm. daughter. Saturday, I speak at a talkback on fences. I've directed fences. I've directed several of Wilson's pieces, but it's really a challenge to have an artistic director, as you said, to take a challenge, to step out on a limb. And I agree. I know that when I go out to Milwaukee or wherever I'm going to go, I've got a team that I know I have a shorthand. I say yin, they say yang. And I ain't got to do a whole lot of talking, and they ain't got to do a whole lot of talking. I understand that. But it's such a challenge. But I want to say that I really, really have a challenge with white directors directing black plays. And I specifically have a challenge with white directors directing the August Wilson plays that I've seen done. But I hear you when you say there's some black people that can't direct a black play as well. And I don't know what that is, except that, you know, it's okay because their name is out there and, you know, they've been accepted by their artistic director. It's not really a question that but I would like to know what does one have to do? You know, what does one, August Wilson said he didn't want white directors directing his plays because they did not understand that aesthetic, which I do understand. I did Jitney with Roscoe Orman, and I'm sitting there and I said, you know, I've never, but my daddy took me to the barbershop every Saturday because my mama had to go grocery shopping and clean in the house. So I went to, so I know about that conversation. I know about those men. But, you know, nobody sees that because I'm a black woman. So I wanted to have some conversation on that.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a lot of issues, and some of them having to do with opportunity and access that are, I think, challenging in lots of ways for lots of people. And you know, and I say that knowing that I'm one of the people who makes opportunity happen and allows access. It's something I think about all the time, and I do things about all the time. I don't know you, so you know, but I think, that is specifically true, but it's also in a way generally true. You know, in my position, I see my responsibility to get out and know as many artists as I can, whose work I would like to have in my house. And I would hope that everybody's doing that. But I also hope that the other is true too. And you said a very important thing, I think, in terms of, you know, from my point of view as producer, you said a very important thing at first, which is that you've been to my house. And I would like to know that, and I'd like to know when you're there. I have artists who say they want to come and work at Two River Theater Company, and they've never been to the Two River Theater Company. And I say, how do you know you want to work there? We may be all hideous monsters or something. If you walked in the door, you need to show me that you're interested in my theater and my audience and what we're doing. But you do bring up a very good point. I think a lot of people are dealing with this. Some of us doing it better than others in some instances, but.
Did you see the Times article maybe a year or so ago? The sisters are taking over Broadway. Only one black woman among the 13.
Yeah.
Only one. And that so challenging.
What was killing me is the brothers is having just as hard a time. Think about what Brothers is directing on Broadway.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes to me to direct on Broadway, they always say, "You take Kenny out." Why I got to take the only brother out?
Exactly.
Whether me and Kenny is cut buddies or not is insignificant. What's important is why do I got to take the one brother out?
Yeah.
Let's ask a couple more questions. We don't have that much.
Yeah.
As a white woman, I do understand what shame. I came from Europe after I had immigrated here in 1950. I do understand particularly what August Wilson said of not wanting white people to direct, but I have to take umbrage with that down the road because I directed Stick Fly. Now, granted, Stick Fly is not of the weight of an August Wilson piece, but I had one of my actors say at one point when I was answering a question, he said, "Praise the Lord, a woman a director who's read the script." Mm-hmm. And I think, as you said, it starts with the script. Now, I may not culturally know everything about the African American culture, but if I'm going to do an August Wilson, or if I'm going to do a Tennessee Williams, or J.B. Priestley, I am going to know that era.
Yeah.
And I demand that of my cast. I bring in libraries full of videos and books, and in an era of Google, it's unforgivable. Mm-hmm. So I do think that, yes, I'm going to direct a black show differently than a black director. But that's not to say I can't look at that script and perceive it and bring a woman's view and fold it in. So I do think as we move forward, I've directed Stones in His Pockets, and the minute I was directing it, I thought this should be played by two black people. We should talk. Because I think it is a play that is exactly the African American story as much as it's the Irish oppressed story. And it's right there in the writing. Nothing has to change except what is the movie that's being filmed. So anyway, I just think that we have a lot to give each other culturally. And even though the scales have been tipped the wrong way, I think we have to be careful not to rule out.
Let me just say this. Let me just say this to you. You have the right, obviously, and I don't have to give it to you. It's yours to direct any damn thing you want to. But and you have the competence to direct them. You direct them. But you could never, ever understand certain things about my culture. And that don't make you a bad director. You can be the finer director than me, finer director than any of us. But it's hard for you to best me in my stuff. And when you say Lydia Diamond and August Wilson, Lydia is writing her stories, and I'm a big fan of her. I did Stick Fly on Broadway. Lydia's, I don't think, is trying to preserve and salvage our culture. She's telling her stories. I said specifically to my wife, the stuff that I have written, I don't want it in anybody's hands. And I'm not talking about competence to everybody. I'm talking about I want my people. If I'm not writing and working for my people, who is? Because I have to stand on the front line for my people, because I don't expect you or anybody else to get up in the morning and your first concern to be me. When I wake up in the morning, my first concern is me. My first concern is, self-preservation is the self-rule of nature. And I'm trying to preserve my people because we've been destroyed. Baby, I'm telling you, when people look at me or anybody that looks like me as a robber, and you don't know how much love I have in my heart for you and everybody else, and your first idea is that I'm wrong, then I got work to do to make sure that your first idea when you see me is that I'm right. That I'm the first thing that your notion of me is not that I'm a descendant of a slave, but I'm a descendant of Benjamin Banneker and Phyllis Wheatley and Elijah McCoy. the steam engine, the light, the stop light, all the things with first open heart surgery, and everything I've contributed to this country. Give me that. And that's what I bring into the room. When I come into the room with my actors, we do this. And I say, what happened today, y'all? Who had a baby? Who got married? Who feeling good? How's your stomach feeling? What you eat today? What y'all got going on? We family. And it's hard. I've never had a white director ever pray with me at the end of my... Now, whether you pray or not, we hold hands at the end of my rehearsal. We hold hands at the beginning. We hold hands at the end. And any beef we have got to be about the work. I deal with my cast in an old African spiritual way. And it's like, not saying that you can bring stuff that I can't bring in the room, but it's shit that I'm going to bring to a black play, ain't no white director in the world going to bring. And that don't make me exclusive or better than you at all.
I'm just saying we should never say never.
That's just Ruben Santiago-Hudson. I'm a stubborn old, damn near 60. I just need ownership of something in this world and in my life. And that ownership, I'm demanding that to be of my culture. That's all I want. I ain't asking for a lot. Like Floyd say, just let me have a little bit of shelter in the world. Let me have a little bit of heat. And that's just my people. Go ahead.
Thank you. One more question. Yes.
Yeah, also as a young white woman starting out, coming into a theater world where I see this disparity, I see the issues, and I'm very concerned about it. It's something I've been trying to figure out as a white woman, what my role is. Like, agreeing that white people should not be in August Wilson plays. Like, I hear about that and I think it's crazy. I agree. Like, what are you doing twisting this cast when it was so meant to preserve? But then, what's my role? What can I do? How do I get involved in the fight in solidarity? Listen, I'm getting ready to do Dominique Morrisseau's a Skeleton Crew. My assistant director is a white guy. I had 50 choices I could have made. I love this guy. He's a dynamite director. He's great in the room with me. He gets me. He brings something into the room. I'm bringing him. I had a black assistant director on my play in Jersey, and he gave me this little white kid that I didn't want, Dennis. I love Dennis. I start going past my assistant that I begged them to hire and give me the money to hire. I start going past her, asking Dennis, get over here. You move over. Get in here. And it was like, it. Dennis, like, Miss Sanel, can I drive you home? Can I walk home with you? Because he was just soaking up everything I wanted to say. And it was like, that ain't why I dug him, because he never stopped working. If I had a question, if I looked and said, you know what, I want a medal on this character. He was in World War II. He was in the 765th Tank Infantry. We got to get a medal for him. By the time I took the next break, Dennis had pictures of 6 different medals. This was the silver, this was the bronze, this was the da-da-da. They had 300 of these, 12 of these were given out, 11 of these were given to that troop. He knew it all, and his sister was sitting there with her leg crossed because she thought she should have been the director. And you know who I'm hiring next? Dennis. It's like, so that ain't color and had nothing to do with it. All I'm preserving in August Wilson, I didn't say that about nobody else, except me, my work. Now, I got a play that white people can direct. It's called Pants. It's a comedy. It ain't got nothing to do with my culture. But August Wilson holds a different place for me, because when I walked into that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, when I snuck into that theater at intermission and sat on the stairs in that double mezzanine and heard them people speak, I started weeping. It was the first time I ever saw my family on stage. And I just said, I got to be a part of this. And once I finally made my way into it 10 years later, I said, I'll never let it go. And I promised him 2 weeks before he died, I'll never let it go, and I'm going to honor it. And I know what you were fighting for, because he said it to me. We got to preserve our culture. And I said, August, I'm going to take it to my deathbed, but I'm going to preserve it. But that don't mean that you can't work with me. Like I said, I got a white assistant director on my next play.
Can I have 2 more minutes? Yeah. I just want Justin, because I imagine in your role as a teacher, you encountered this, right?
Well, what I say a lot is, how do you, learning how to use your privilege to increase access is one of the art forms that white people have to invest and learn how to do. And I mean, because a lot of people don't like acknowledging that they have privilege of any color. Black people, we want to always try and show how we're just we don't have much, because with privilege comes responsibility. And people don't want to necessarily have to be held responsible for, so we shirk privilege. But I think a lot is trying to figure out how can I use, if you're interested in this word that you use, allyship, how can I use what I have, my privilege, to increase access for those I want to be an ally for, as opposed to how can I be an ally in a way that makes me feel better about myself? And you have to be careful and honest with yourself about which one we're doing. And I don't know, but that's part of the challenge that you have to negotiate.
Important conversations that we don't often get to have. So, yeah.
Ever want this conversation.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, I was happy. I'm like, I know we have to stop. I don't want to stop.
Yeah.
I feel like the ideal theater is up here somehow. Like we just have to spread it out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for this conversation. It will be on our YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch it. Share it with people because it is a really, really important conversation that we need to keep having.
And I gotta say though, I'd be remiss if I don't acknowledge who I'm sitting next to. No, honestly, because this is my first opportunity to meet this brother, and he has been a hero of mine as well. I mean, an inspiration. And you know, a lot of times we don't get a chance to do this. You are inspiring people that you don't even know. You know, I mean, so it's really valuable, and I feel honored to be able to sit up here with you and have engaged in this conversation. And I know that a lot of the work that I've done is because what you've done and helped lay the groundwork for. So
Appreciate you. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.